Welcome everyone to the Everton Byline. This is episode number 64. I'm Matt Jones. Joining me here in person today is Paddy and we are upstairs at the Bridewell. So you hear a few pub sounds, clinking of glasses, all that kind of stuff. That's why we're here today. But rare day off, so forth. We come record in person. Unfortunately, Paddy, we haven't got too many upbeat topics to talk about today. So maybe good that we've managed to get a beer and do it. But yeah, before we get into talking about all those, obviously this place, this great booze, does sponsor us. Thank you very much for their support. Over the last year or so now, great place to come and have a pint, certainly during these winter months. Very cozy downstairs, heaters on outside, always absolutely fantastic. And yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube, do leave us a comment, do hit like, do hit subscribe. All those things really help get the podcast and the videos in front of as many people as possible. And on Spotify and on Apple, you can leave us a rating, leave us a review, and leave us a comment as well now. So yeah, if you want to get, I should say as well, if you want to get in touch with us about anything, additionally, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com for emails and potential longer correspondence. But yeah, big intro done, Paddy. How you doing?
Yeah, all right. Came away from Saturday's game at the Etihad a bit confused as to what I actually was going to write, because it felt like journalistically all of the problems have sort of already been discussed. I said that rather flippantly in my match piece. We know Everton lack a top quality goal scoring striker. We know Everton lack fullbacks, particularly on the right side, but I'd argue on the left too, given the use of Asnu so far, the lack of use of Asnu so far. And I think just all of that kind of came home to roost on Saturday. So I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit and trying to find new angles where the same thing keeps happening. I suppose that's Groundhog Day, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, let's try and look at it a different way. I was thinking about this on the way in about, obviously, we know all the issues that are kind of there, and we've spoken about them a lot. But overall, I think, obviously, talking about this particular fixture against City going into this weekend, we haven't beaten them in any league game since 2016. 17, is it? Sorry. Yeah. So that's what, it'll be 9 years by the time we play them again.
17 games.
That is a lot, obviously. So obviously it's been a while since we beat them. And for much of my 20s and growing up, it always felt like we were kind of their bogey team for a bit. And obviously we went to the Etihad and won quite a lot. We've not beat them for a while now. Obviously everyone knows about our record at Anfield. Everyone knows about our record at Chelsea. Everyone knows about our record at Arsenal and Liverpool. Certainly, obviously we won at both of those grounds in the COVID season, but in front of supporters, it's been a long time since we won at any of these places. And just, listen, I don't think in any one of those games we played, sort of in the Premier League era, really, against any of those sides, you could look at and go, Everton are the favourites really going to any of those. Obviously, City, when they, before they got the money, perhaps there's a different matter. And when they start to transition under the Sheikh Mansour era, they got better and better as the seasons went on. But by and large, for most of those games, Everton have not been favourites. But every now and then you see teams, I think off the top of my head in recent years, Palace seem to do it quite a lot. Brentford, I think, have done it a few times. Teams that have been around the Premier League for a while now have kind of established themselves. I think Bournemouth have gone to Chelsea, haven't they, and won recently as well. Fulham have been to Chelsea and won. And for us, it's never really happened, has it? And I think, I know the odds should say that on a one-off game, Everton going to any of those teams, they probably are more likely to lose. The bookmakers would have them as second favourites.
Yeah, they were 6-1 on Saturday.
Yeah, in pretty much all those fixtures across the course of the Premier League era. And yet they just, even the odds will say that once every now and then, Everton will surprise in one of these games. And whether it's been under Moyes, and I don't really want to paint this as a David Moyes thing, because I think it's happened under so many different managers now. What is it about us? What is it about us or about Everton as a club, really, not necessarily this team, that makes them kind of incapable of pulling off those surprise results? Because the only one I can really think off the top of my head in front of supporters is 2013 when we won at United with Oviedo. Other than that, taking that City little run out of it, we haven't really gone anywhere and just completely upset someone, have we?
No, I think it's an Everton thing, and I think it's also a David Moyes thing. So at times, that's one and the same thing. It becomes the same issue. I saw a stat on Saturday after the game which said that Everton have failed to win any of their last 30 odd games where they've been away to a side that finished the previous season in the top 3. But Moyes' record alone in those games across Everton and West Ham is 1 win in 59. The only time he's gone to one of those sides and won was for West Ham away at the Emirates against Arsenal. So an Everton thing, a David Moyes thing, it would be unfair on him and on the players not to mention the disparity in resources and the disparity in quality. They've got Erling Haaland up front. Everton have got better right now. It's not even Lukaku or a player of that quality. So that's an issue in itself. They have superior players, and you look at their bench, and where I was sat in the media spaces in the Etihad, in front of us by the touchline, you've got Marmoush, Cherky, Kovacic, all warming up in the second half. And at the same time, Timo Rabunim's warming up for Everton. It's not really a fair fight, this. And that's not to say Everton shouldn't be going there and looking to get results, but I think that's fair in kind of adequate context. The other issue, and I think this afflicts sides that are long-standing members of the Premier League, is that I think a mentality block, a rut sets in when they go to these grounds, Anfield, Emirates, Etihad, Old Trafford, even when those teams aren't performing pretty well. And it's almost like we've got such a history of losing here that it becomes a daunting prospect to go there anyway, that the experiences are so negative that the players almost probably feel as though they're fighting a losing battle. Brentford don't have it, and I suppose Crystal Palace don't have it because they've not been tarred by as many as many of those defeats. But it is frustrating. I mean, I asked David Moyes after the game on Saturday. I put my tin hat on and effectively said to him, like, what do Everton need to do to start winning in these games? And kind of he puffed out, and he basically said, well, how long have you got? Sort of thing. He feels as though they're getting closer. And although Everton drew against City last season, it was very much a scrappy, slightly fortuitous draw where they rode the luck.
They were really struggling at that point as well, City, weren't they?
But I felt as though like Everton battened down the hatches, and it was just it was a wing and a prayer stuff. Here there was actually a game plan to take it to City a little bit more. But what that meant at times was that they got caught the other way. And I don't know about you, but I was really disappointed with both of the goals from a defensive perspective. I mean, we can talk about Erling Haaland's movement all we want, and of course he's superb in every facet of forward play. But I just felt there were so many errors with both goals, and both of them were so kind of eminently avoidable that probably everything unravelled so quickly in the space of 5 minutes, and the game was gone. Like the final half an hour, to me, with both sides making substitutions fairly regularly, Everton brought on McNeil and Roll, and it was almost like, we accept this game is gone now. Guardiola knew it was gone, and it felt like a friendly match for the final half an hour.
They declared sort of thing, Like, I think City have done that quite a few times against us, but like the only time we've really been like absolutely smashed by them, I think, was the 5-0 when Aguero scored 2 in his last game on the last day of the season under Ancelotti. That was the last day of the COVID season, wasn't it? But like it usually tends to like they get to like 2 or 3 and they think, that's enough now. We'll just sort of see it through. But
I was worried about that towards the end, because I think Haaland went through 3 times in injury time alone, and probably should have scored a couple. Pickford makes some good saves. There's some good bits of defending in there. But I was worried that it wouldn't just be 2-0. It'd end up being 4 or 5. And I think that would have been very, very harsh on Everton, because like, for the first half, they more or less went toe-to-toe with a very good side. A side I think will definitely do better in the league this season and may end up contending for the title this year. Moyes said afterwards that Iliman Ndiaye was the best player on the pitch in the first half, and my timeline certainly on social media was clogged with all these City fans finally realising what we all knew, that he is a top player and has got loads of potential too. One thing that really excited me about Ndiaye recently is just, and I think I've said this on a previous show, how he seems to add new things to his game, and you see something different every time he plays. So he's playing on the right wing this season, which is a different role to the left. A lot more of it in the early part of the year was about getting to the back post, getting on the end of crosses from Grealish. So you see his poacher's instinct there, which we didn't see as much
Yeah.
out on the left. But in recent games, you've got the kind of the stood up cross for Beto against that was West Ham, wasn't it? No,
Palace. Yeah.
Against Palace. Memories playing up. You had a similar moment for Senegal recently in African qualification for the World Cup. And every time you watch him, there just seems to be something new. So he plays a ball through for Idris again, releases him down the right. He releases Beto down the right of the box for a really good chance. And I always think we're seeing, because he's playing in different roles now, we're almost seeing a bit of an evolution in him, new skills. And I was so impressed with just how he seemed to have that kind of big man persona where it's like that aura where he's strutting around the pitch, and he was meant to be there. So it was a shame that they didn't carry that on. I think he was implicated as well in the first goal.
Switched off a little bit.
He switched off, and Nico O'Reilly gets round the back of him, and Jake O'Brien. James Tarkowski actually in the middle is complaining to O'Brien about the space O'Reilly finds himself in. The defending was not good on that. The central defenders failed to mark Haaland, and I thought that was pretty unforgivable in its own right. But what I would say is the goal is made by a defender, a fullback, taking Everton into really uncomfortable places. And I just don't think Everton haven't got the equivalent from fullback, and I think that's a big issue in the modern game.
Yeah, like I'm with you in the sense that I think my main gripe with that first goal is how easy they get into the position. Because I get what they're saying. Like, you've got to mark Haaland. He's the obvious threat. Like, he's a big guy. He stands out. Everyone knows he scores loads of goals. But I think in the same breath, like, I imagine the centre halves are sort of looking at it going, well, there's a reason why he's scoring loads of goals, and that's because he's actually really hard to mark. And like, you can't like keep touch tight to him all the time because he is so physical. Yeah. His movement is so good. He's so fast. Like, so as much as I think you can say, he's obviously the big threat, mark him. It's dead hard. It's the classics. It's the classic Arjen Robben thing when everyone's like, well, just show him on his right foot down the line and it'll be absolutely fine. It's like, well, no, he's really good and really fast and skillful. Like, it's not as easy as it looks. So I think I've got to, they should probably do a bit better, obviously, and like look a little bit flat-footed. But the reason Haaland scores so many goals is because he's absolutely brilliant at finding those spaces, and that's just how it is. So, but yeah, I think you're right, and I think that little situation there with Ndiaye, I think you're right. He was excellent, obviously, in the game, but where he just switches off, that's kind of the payoff you've got to take, I think, when you're by playing someone who is a bit more attack-minded in that position, as opposed to what we've had over the last few years, and someone like Harrison, who maybe would be, I don't think he was a great defensive winger by any means, but he might be a bit more switched on in that situation, or be a little bit more deeper, just naturally inclined. Whereas Ndiaye is maybe thinking in his head at that point, right, if they give it away, can I get forward a little bit there? He's probably thinking more from a front foot point of view.
He'll have been tired by that point as well. I mean, it was only the hour mark, but he basically carried just about all of Everton's threat up to that point, and does work really hard. I mean, the amount of times in the first half where I actually saw him track Doku all the way into the right back channel with O'Brien slightly inside. I mean, there's maybe a lesson there with Everton, and it's that these players can do a lot, but they can't do everything all the time, and they can't do that relentlessly for 90 minutes. And sometimes it's about maybe using your bench a little bit more and getting more out of the rest of the squad. And that was the shame, really, because the chances were there. A kind reading of the first Beto chance from Ndiaye's cross says that the ball was slightly in front of him and he's always stretching. But I thought his reaction was really telling. Like, he started banging the post relentlessly.
I don't think it was that bad.
No.
I didn't watch the game in real time. I've seen a lot of people sort of going mad about it online. I thought, oh no, what's he done now after his miss on international duty?
It wasn't as bad as the miss.
No. I mean, it takes some doing, but again, it's one of those, like, he's an inch away from it, and if he gets a bit more of a foot on that to be able to put it in the back of the net, everyone's saying that movement's great. He takes the defender to the front post, comes away, and he sticks it away. I think it's just one of those things where, you are talking about like the tiniest of margins there, and if he just makes that run a little bit quicker, or the passes maybe a little bit better, then Everton are 1-0 up, and we're all saying that's really, really good. And like, I feel like I'm sticking up for them all quite a lot today. Actually, I think being quite nice about them. But yeah, like I think it's just one of their things. And going back to that Ndiaye situation, like I think that's what the really good sides do, isn't it? Like I think probably the thing that we maybe don't appreciate as much is that when you're out on the pitch and you're putting so much effort in to counter-attack, and then you've got to get back and defend, and you've got to be so switched on because the players around you are so sharp and so good on the ball, and you're getting penned in gradually over the course of the game, like your concentration just dwindles a little bit, and then when it just goes for that split second and they're in, that's where I think that they can capitalise on it. And like I think that's why I think these teams sometimes you get to the hour mark and then they tend to just find the breakthrough.
And they've got better players off the bench, but I think there is a cumulative effect where they wear down the opposition over time. I also think that the worst thing for an attacking winger is to have a fullback bombing past him all the time. And again, that's something that Everton simply don't have. I think it brings so much balance in attack. It's how the best teams find a way round the opposition. If you look at how City were trying to attack against Everton, it wasn't really through the spine of the team. It wasn't really through the centre. A lot of it actually was in the channel between Everton's centre-backs and full-backs, with Doku and Savino going out to win. And that's so hard to defend against, particularly then when you've got O'Reilly bombing past them and Nunes on the other side going. It's like kind of a three-dimensional, whereas Everton are doing everything in 2D with just the wingers. And Ndiaye or Grealish every single time have to be perfect to beat their man. When you get fullbacks there as well, it gives you a load of help. So I just think that it's the kind of quality, it's the kind of run and quality ball into the box that you wouldn't see from Everton, or you very, very rarely see from Everton. And I do think that's the next step in the evolution. The next step is to find players who can do that as well. If I'm looking at the team, it feels like the big upgrade has to come centre forward and at fullbacks. But we knew this before, probably.
Yeah. And like I think just to wrap this up and link it back to what I asked you at the start about why haven't Everton done more like big surprises in these sorts of fixtures. I think the way you get around that when like a team's got fullbacks that bomb on and leave like space in behind is that you need blistering pace to sort of really capitalise on it.
Yeah.
And just thinking back to Everton in the Premier League era, really, we've not had loads of that, have we? Like even like Theo Walcott, who was one of the fastest players probably in Premier League history, had sort of lost that yard by that point, hadn't he? Like we haven't had like a winger who would like just be able to, I think there's a reason like Adama Traore, for example, who's like such a limited player, but he's had a lot of success against like teams like City in the past, hasn't he? Just because there's so much space for him to capitalise on the counter attack, and we've just never had a player who's like that direct and that rapid to be able to be that searing threat on the break.
I remember a couple of years ago, Everton went to the Etihad and they lost by a couple of goals. And we spoke to James Tarkowski after the match, and we were talking a bit about the game plan, and he kind of explained how the idea was to hit City over the top. I was thinking that's fine, but then you look at the team sheet, and actually that day Everton had a 39-year-old Ashley Young and Dwight McNeil as the wingers, with Jack Harrison coming off the bench. And I was kind of thinking to myself, they're not going to win that race anyway. They've not got that pace and that dynamism. And sure, they're catching up with the signings at Grealish and Dewsbury Hall and Ndiaye getting better and better. But it does feel like they still lack a little bit in those areas. It still feels as though the squad's gone from A to B, but it needs to go from B to C to D to E. There's still loads more evolution in this side. And I think the kindest way of framing it, I think, is like the season's not going to be defined by City away. No. But at some point it would be nice if they started to just pick up even the odd win at those places, so it makes it worthwhile for fans.
Winning 1 in 10 games would be fine.
Yeah.
But we're not even getting near that. So yeah, it feels like I've said this about Everton a few times, but it feels like it's one of those things just kind of just under the skin of the football club now. Like it sort of transcends the managers and the players and the supporters and everything else. Like it's just one of those things that we as a football club just can't do. But moving forward anyway, from our trademark defeat at Manchester City, literally on the way in to town today, Paddy, when Everton officially confirmed that Jarrad Branthwaite is having surgery after the setback on his injury. It is a massive blow, isn't it? Because I think we were all sort of looking at the team sheet on Saturday and thinking it's going to be too soon for him, but hopefully have him back for Tottenham and in the run to Christmas. But obviously, I don't think they Everton put an official timestamp or anything on this, but it feels like surgery. We'll be looking to see him again this year, really.
Yeah.
Should we be worried about this now? Because I think at the start of the season when he went down with an injury, we're all like, he's had a few now, but this is obviously another one. And I think the club said it's a complication in regards to his recovery. So that would suggest it's a
setback,
a similar thing. It's just awful for the lad, obviously, but I think for Everton, having convinced him to stay and sign a new contract, it's just like the worst possible time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a blow for everyone, isn't it? For Branthwaite in World Cup year, because I do think that at his best, he's more than good enough to be in that England squad at the moment. Massive blow for Everton, one of the highest paid players who's now going to be out for a considerable time, on top of the considerable time he's already been on the sidelines for. I'm not too surprised, because I think actually when you look back over Branthwaite's history, he started last season with an injury, and it took him a while, until about October, September time to get fit and into the side. And he obviously had a few issues at the end of last season into the start of this season. This started, in hindsight, probably the giveaway was his lack of participation in the squad, even at the Etihad. But I think most of us just took the view that Everton were being ultra coy with him only just back in first team training. Merlin Roll was not only on the bench, but he came on. But Branthwaite's been out longer. I think it's a concern for two reasons. The first is that Branthwaite has shown now that he is susceptible to these injuries, particularly muscular problems, and there's a history of those now. And I don't think Everton can afford to be paying so much money on wages for a player this good to be on the sidelines. But I also think it's a concern in the sense that while we don't know all the specifics of the injury and how it occurred beyond it being in training, it's a setback, it's a relapse, whatever you want to call it. And I think that prompts its own kind of investigation and inquiries. So it's a bitter blow. The knock-on effect, and I think that's probably the most important thing now, is that Everton were probably already in a position where they were short. They ended the summer window not only looking for right-backs initially, but then focusing on centre-backs and left-backs, because they knew that they were short across all of those positions. And you're probably only now one injury away from a situation where, let's say, Tarkowski or Keane picks up a knock, or worse still, Jake O'Brien has to shuffle inside. There's one change. Then you need a new right back. If the new right back is Coleman or Patterson, then okay, that's two changes. But if it's James Garner, for argument's sake, then you need a midfield replacement. And all of a sudden, you're spreading yourself thinly everywhere. And I think that's a problem. If this is, as feared, a kind of an injury that's going to keep him out for a decent amount of time, then probably you have to look at the market again. They ended, even before Branthwaite's setback, they ended the last window looking for those options. So it was already a thought. If this is going to kind of rumble on and on, then they're going to have to do something about it in the January market. It's not an opportune time to do something. It's not a great time to try and replace somebody of Jarrad Branthwaite's quality. Just a shame. Bad news immediately after the Manchester City game as well.
Yeah, it's like they do look really short, don't they? All of a sudden, I think going into the season, you sort of looked at it for Branthwaite to be back soon. You've got Asnu there who can cover left back, but I think what's quite clear is that the manager doesn't think he's anywhere near ready yet. I'd be surprised if we saw him play. I don't know. Maybe this changes things. I don't know, but in Moyes' ideal world, I imagine he wouldn't be anywhere near the team for a while. Yeah. And then so you take him out of it, and you take Branthwaite out of it, and all of a sudden you've got one left back. Your main cover for that left back is James Garner at this point, who is also your main cover at right back. So you're right, all it takes is for one more injury. And then you are basically at your limit, aren't you, in that sense?
And then you've got Idrissa Gueye on the way to AFCON. So this is what I mean. It's just all stretched, it's all thin. And I think what it will do is it'll shine a spotlight on those holes in the squad, the work that wasn't done over the summer. I accept that there was an awful lot to do over summer, but I think we said at the time that the fullback area, particularly right back, felt like the one big glaring weakness. And if they had like a bona fide number one right back right now, you kind of just go, well, O'Brien can compensate in the centre, and it all feels like it should sort of be okay. But I think what we're seeing now is that probably at least one player short, maybe two, depending on how Asnu goes. And that's far from ideal. Yeah, it's bad news, isn't it? I don't think there's any way of sugarcoating it, to be honest.
No, absolutely not. And just sort of on like away from this, let's talk about this. If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. Yeah. But like, so obviously we were messaging this morning. We kind of knew that this happened.
Yeah.
In light of what happened around his last injury, as a reporter, did you change anything or do anything differently in regards to this today, or did you just kind of go about your business as usual? Because obviously Moyes made a big point, didn't he, before the season, and it was particularly about Jarrad Branthwaite and his injury, and we've not really had I'm trying to think throughout the season, we've not really had a situation like this with any other player really going into a game, or certainly a key player where they've had a potential big injury or a big injury setback. So in light of what happened in the summer, has anything sort of changed in that regard for the way in which you've covered it today?
So in light of Moyes' comments on those leaks, the process is the same and really doesn't change, to be honest. I mean, we spoke about this morning. We knew we were going to be discussing this on the podcast. We had stuff prepped in the morning, ready to go on this. And as ever, what tends to happen is we do our checks, and those checks are so thorough that it just takes time.
Yeah,
it takes time. So we'll check with various people. We'll check and check again, and it just got to the point where those checks took a bit of time, and probably longer than I, as a journalist, would want, because you always want to get it out first and be the first one to write it. What it did do, at the very least, knowing that it had happened and knowing what was likely to come in the club update later, it gave me a bit of an opportunity to think about what I wanted to say within pieces, think about what I wanted to say when we were doing the show and on Byline. And while it's bad news, you're trying to provide something other than that, aren't you? And you're trying to provide a bit of analysis, a bit of comment. What's likely to come next? What do they need to do in response to this? So no, nothing changes really. It's still my job as a journalist to chase these stories and to break these stories. There's always that frustration, probably what we messaged 9ish, 10ish in the morning, and that's more or less when I knew. There's always that when you see stuff start to filter out on social media, is this going to end up breaking before we get to it, before we've made all of our checks? And sometimes there are those frustrations that, it feels like we should have got that out there quicker, but it's out now, and I think that's the most important thing is the ramifications, not for me, but for Everton and how they deal with this. And it's bad news. Isn't it?
Yeah, like it's like obviously it's a big update, and like obviously we're disappointed for the team, for Jarrad, but like do you think it means that they have to change anything? Because it doesn't really change anything what they've been doing, does it, with the setup in one sense? Because like all the players that have been fit the last few weeks are still going to be fit, so we could technically feel the same back four for the next game.
Yep.
As much as like this is like a proper blow. But do you think the fact that he's going to be out for a bit longer means that Moyes might have to reconfigure what he does with O'Brien and how he moves him in? When he look at the last few weeks and think like we haven't kept when we last keep a clean sheet? Was it the Brighton game, wasn't it? The home game? I might be getting that completely wrong there, but feels like that was the last time we kept a clean sheet in the league. So we're not like watertight defensively, are we, at the moment? So is it one of them where this will change anything, do you think? Or is it a situation where we haven't been defending great anyway, so we might just have to look at it regardless of what's going on with Branthwaite?
Yeah, I think you're right that Everton was susceptible. Even in the wins, they were susceptible. They conceded 2 against Wolves, and they really should have won that game quite easily, given where they were at one point. I think one of the big problems...
Villa was our last clean sheet, wasn't it? 0-0.
Villa was, yeah. So I think one of the things I notice about Branthwaite is he's got that thing where he makes everybody else look better. So he makes Mykolenko look better because he's around on the cover so quickly, and that space between centre back and left back that I was talking about. he kind of occupies, that he's so quick and so imposing that he's there. But I also think he kind of makes up for some of Tarkowski's weaknesses and vice versa, in the sense that like Branthwaite's quicker across the ground, left-footed option. Tarkowski can then be more aggressive, knowing that Branthwaite can come and sweep up behind him. There have been a lot of occasions so far this season already, just off the top of my head, where Everton have been caught in that position behind Michael Keane and Mykolenko. I'm not saying it's their fault, by the way, necessarily, and that they're the only people to blame. But the kind of moments that you probably don't see as much with Branthwaite in the side. And I actually think Keane's been one of Everton's better defenders.
Yeah.
So far this season, by the way. I don't think much changes in the short term, but what I think they will now be looking at is contingency planning. So it's, like I said, we are one more injury away from having to reshuffle. So does that mean that we have to give Jake O'Brien a bit more time at centre-back? Does that mean then that we look at giving Patterson or Coleman a bit more, a few more minutes? Where Everton, I suppose, are lucky is in that Coleman played twice for the Republic of Ireland and did well, by all accounts, during the last international break. Jake O'Brien actually played on the right side of a back three, but still as a centre-back. Similar role to Everton, but not quite. So they do have options there, and O'Brien's somebody who is naturally a centre-half by trade. It just feels like the one away from having to reshuffle. And I think you have to plan for that. You have to think, well, what's the worst case scenario here? Are we prepared to cover it? Do we then need to give O'Brien more minutes at centre-back? Do we need to give Patterson, Coleman, Garner more minutes at full-back? And I think you work from there.
Yeah, I think the fact that Roll is back may tempt him into doing something as well, because I think he feels like the next one in line, does he play centrally alongside Idrissa Gueye. Garner wants to go right back, and then you've got Irabunu, who's done all right off the bench recently. Dewsbury Hall's back now as well. Alcaraz has played. Like, there are options there to sort of...
Grealish returns.
Yeah, there are sorts of options there to rejig that midfield around a little bit if he thinks that Garner can plug the gap at right back. But yeah, it feels like one of those where, like, I think in games where you're going to sit in and be like trying to be compact and deep, like at City, like you can kind of get away. I think we said in the week, like, Doku was probably a nightmare opponent for O'Brien. I don't think he did terribly the weekend against them. But I think largely in games where you're going to sit deep, it's going to be about protecting your back four and like a bit of a low block. Like O'Brien's probably okay, but it's when you've got to get on the front foot and you've got to get width and you've got to get crosses into the box that, you maybe look at someone like Garner and think he might be a bit more of a better option there. And if he likes Merlin Road, he can drop him a little bit deeper. We played him on the right wing, didn't he, when he came on Saturday, which is a bit mad.
Yeah, he played him in a variety of positions. You ended up with Dwight McNeil as a 10 at one point. It all looked a little bit confused, didn't it, in terms of what was happening off the bench. I guess the idea was purely that Ndiaye needed a breather and he wanted Roll to get some minutes because he knows Roll can push into the starting 11, potentially. And I do think whether he was playing on the right or the left or in the centre, he did show us some decent stuff. Off the bench, you saw why Everton like him. Carries the ball, he's mobile. There's a header into the side netting at one point. Despite his size, good technically. And I think that the size is a bit of a confusing. It's a bit of a red herring with Roll, in the sense that actually a lot of the stuff he does well is technical. Moyes likes him and Moyes thinks he can push on. So what you hope from him is that he gets his minutes, he can do that, and he doesn't get injured again in the meantime, because obviously he's had a couple of injury problems since he joined as well. Injury seems to be a theme on the pod this week.
He just seems like one of those players. I'm like, if he can keep him fit, he'll be fine. Like I think because of his physical stature and like his dynamism, like, and he doesn't really seem particularly phased from what I've seen from so far. He's just sort of come into two different situations and just kind of cracked on. Like, feels like he'll be absolutely fine as long as we can keep him fit.
Well, I think they need that kind of player as well in central midfield. You look at Idrissa Gueye and James Garner, and they've both got their own qualities, their own strengths, their own weaknesses. What they're not going to do is pick the ball up on the centre circle and carry it forward significantly. Neither of them really. Gueye sometimes,
or win like a header, like
or kind of win a header and then run on to the pass and do things that way in a really progressive manner. They just don't have that in their locker, really. And I think that's why Roll was brought in. He's versatile, but he can also give you a bit more on the front foot. Probably the only other player in the centre of the park that does that is Alcaraz. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Roll quickly, if he stays fit, move beyond Alcaraz and Moyes' thinking and start to get more minutes from there. I don't know about you, but I didn't feel like that triangle worked in a particularly effective way against City at the weekend.
No.
Dewsbury, Hall, Garner and Gay. It didn't really seem to do enough in any facet, whether it was winning the ball back, counter-attacking, passing, any of that kind of stuff. It all felt like it was a bit one-paced, a bit lacking in dynamism, a bit safe at times, and Roll maybe is the antidote to that in certain matches.
Yeah, he's just a bit more direct, isn't he, I think? And obviously Alcaraz did that to an extent against Palace, but he's obviously shunted out into a bit of a different position, wasn't he?
Feel sorry for him.
Yeah, it was always going to happen, wasn't it, with Dewsbury Hall coming back, to the manager obviously loves Dewsbury Hall. But yeah, it was a bit of a weird one, but listen, we have got options there at least, which is more than you say about other bits of the squad. Other bits of the squad at the moment. Let's finish off by talking about one manager who would definitely love Merlin Roll in his squad, because he's a big fella, wins headers. Imagine he'd go for set pieces. But Sean Dyche, Paddy, is well, before we started recording this, like he was on his way to Forest. Given Marinakis and given some of the managerial mad things that have happened in the last few days, I wouldn't say it's fully confirmed yet, but it might be by the time people watch or listen to this. But Dyche back at Forest. I mean, you say back at Forest, so it feels like he's been there before, because he obviously loves Nottingham, doesn't he? Has made no secret of that in the past. But he's back in the Premier League. Surprised? I'm certainly surprised that he's getting a job with a club that are in Europe. But given what's been going on at Forest and the way they kind of self-imploded, maybe not a huge surprise that they've turned to him. But what do you think about Dyche returning to the Premier League? And are you looking forward to speaking to him again in a press conference in a few weeks? We play him twice in December, don't we? So good chance to get properly reacquainted.
A lovely reunion between Dyche and the Merseyside press back.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's relishing it. He can't wait to see us all.
I can just imagine if he gets a good result at Hill Dickinson or Seagull, the smugness would be enough to power. But I've seen a lot of people sort of laughing at Forest for this, and God, just wait and see. Towards the end, obviously, it got a bit ridiculous, didn't it? With I can't remember what he said verbatim after Bournemouth, but it was if we'd not lost those games, we'd be on a good run or something like that. But I think I haven't really got that feeling of animosity towards him that I think a lot of people have. I think he came in and did a steady job. It ran its course ultimately. He put his hands up at the end and said, I've done all I can here, and I'm ready to sort of move on. It was horrible those last few months, and I think he got the start to that season very wrong in the way in which he pitched it, in the way in which he spoke in public. But I don't really feel angry towards him or despise the fact. It seems like a lot of people in our fan base do.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we take the fan perspective on this, my thoughts on that would be, I think he did a really good job initially in helping Everton navigate that really tough period with points deductions and everything else. Felt like the club was imploding, and I think he and the players deserve immense credit for keeping them afloat in those situations. I think at that moment in time, he was the ideal manager for Everton. I would never have, in theory, really wanted Sean Dyche at Everton, to be honest. But it felt like in those circumstances, with no budget, with things the way they were off the field, he was sort of the man to stabilise. And I wrote when he left that as bad as things had got, and as much as he'd not helped himself with fans and what he'd said and results and everything else, even with media, by the way, I do think that if you take the emotion away from it and you do put a bit of distance time-wise between everything, history will actually remember him as the manager that helped see Everton through.
Definitely, yeah.
There were loads of issues, and I think there's a real ceiling on what he's going to do. But I also think actually that where Forest are in that really chaotic phase, a little bit like where Everton were when he arrived, he's probably a safe, stable pair of hands for them. I actually think the transition from Nuno to Dyche is much easier than it was from Nuno to Postecoglou. Dyche and Nuno share quite a lot of principles in the sense that it's defence first, and then you look to counter from there. Nuno did it with real pace, whereas Dyche looks for the target man more often than not and looks to build from there. But I think there was some good times. I remember Everton beating Chelsea in the December, and they were on a real run of form. And I remember thinking, you know what, I actually quite like this team right now in terms of the performances. And
that was when he said that he really enjoyed Lewis Dobbin's no-nonsense celebration.
Yeah. And that was a direct dig at people like Onana for celebrating in what Dyche saw as a non-traditional way.
That was probably at the peak level of affection between the fans and him. Obviously, we had that.
But that was never really affection, was it? It was more kind of we like the team and we kind of tolerate Dyche, but it never felt as though he looked to build a bond with fans and fans ever really took to him as an individual. Not in the way that they did even with some of his predecessors. I mean, even I wouldn't say Marco Silva had a particularly great bond with fans, but I think Silva tried more than, say, Dyche did, and lots of others have done.
But I think at that point, after that was the fourth win. That was the third win in a row, wasn't we? We ended up being Burnley, I think, after that. And then we had the Onana full penalty thing, which we won't go into again here. But I feel like at that point, it was sort of we'd had 2 home games in a row. We beat Newcastle, we beat Chelsea. We had the points deduction. It felt like everyone was properly on the same page at that point. So I think you're right. I don't think that was due to him doing anything differently or going out of his way to try and build a connection. It was just a general appreciation for what he'd done and the way in which he'd managed to motivate people in what was, a grim time. Really.
Well, look, our jobs as reporters, it's mainly to look at what he is producing and assess him on those terms. It's not to say, I don't like this guy and I don't like the way he is with me in press conferences, as much as you might want to. It's, here's the result on the pitch and here's the job he's doing, and let's do our best to stay neutral and analyse it within those parameters. He was never particularly easy to deal with, and you'll have seen that yourself from press conferences. He could be flippant. He certainly had this thing of, if he felt somebody in the media was questioning them, he'd be quite patronising at times and whatever else. I remember after Everton stayed up against Bournemouth, big relief for everyone, including people in the room who were covering it, by the way, who want to see Everton do well. And he walked out the room and said to us, thanks for all your support this season, in a really kind of sarcastic way. And it's well, it's not our job in the media really to support in that sense. We're there to do a journalistic job. But it felt like at the wrong time to kind of say that kind of thing. They just stayed up. So there's loads of moments like that, but you try your best not to hold it against managers. And that's not just Dyche, by the way, that's anyone you work with on a day-to-day basis. And then you assess the job he's done. And like I say, I think the job for a half of it, maybe 2/3 of his time at Everton was pretty decent. It always had a shelf life because of the style of football he played and because the lack of the relationship with fans. I also think that he actually found he was a big fish in a small pond at Burnley. And whenever he dealt with the media or whenever he saw things on Match of the Day or Talk Sport, a lot of it was overwhelmingly positive because it was, look what a great job he's doing with these plucky underachievers.
But he's well liked, isn't he? He's those sorts of parts.
He's well liked, but you come to Everton and there's much more scrutiny, and there's people questioning stuff like ourselves in the media, like why are you doing this, and this? Why is Nathan Patterson being left? Why is player X being left out to the side? And I think that level of scrutiny was quite surprising and quite difficult maybe for him to take at times. So it'll be really interesting to see how he deals with Marinakis. When you also include some of the figures in the background at Forest Edu and his relationship with certain agents, I think it's going to be really interesting. They've spent so much money, Forest, on players who just aren't anywhere near the squad. I mean, like Amari Hutchinson and James McAtee cost, I think, a combined 60-ish million.
Yeah, almost, I think Hutchinson was 35, wasn't he?
Yeah, a massive overpay, in my opinion, for Hutchinson. I quite like McAtee, but they're not even in the squad at times. So, I mean, he's in a better position in the sense that Forest fans know he lives in the city. He spent most of his time.
Is he their Rafa? Knows the city.
Yeah, he knows the city. Basically, he is their Rafa in every sense. The year he was unemployed after leaving Burnley, he spent most of his time at the City Ground. Ian Woan and Steve Stone, obviously, kind of club legends, so you'll see them going.
Imagine how many times he's going to mention Brian Clough. It'd be Cloughie this, Cloughie that. wearing it constantly. You'll love all that.
Well, there was that nauseating story. I mean, if any of our listeners have not heard this, do go and look it up.
Oh, no, we go.
Type in Sean Dyche, Brian Clough, leaves on the trees falling. And there's this story about Sean Dyche clearing away Brian Clough's leaves in his back garden, and
that will 100% be mentioned.
It will, yeah. It's nauseating stuff, and like even the impression he does of Clough, it kind of makes your skin crawl a little bit.
It's going to be awful, isn't it? Yeah. Feel the cringe already.
But it'll be interesting because I know one of the complaints with Postecoglou from Forest fans was that he didn't really look to tie himself to the fans and to the club. Dyche didn't do that at Everton, but I feel like he may have a better chance of doing so at Forest than before.
I think that purely be because the players are better suited to his style of play than Postecoglou. Like, I mean, I feel like one of those, like, if Postecoglou started well, like, fans will just latch on to anything where the ultimate. Like, and sort of like the point I was going to make about Dyche is probably indicative of this, is that, like, if you're in a situation as a supporter, I think, where you don't really like much of your squad, you don't think they're pulling the weight, I think you might have a few, like, fancy Dans in there, like which we did really after Lampard left. Like, you will love Dyche for those first couple of weeks because he will do those things like
bleep test.
Remember the pictures of players being sick and him laughing? Like,
everyone was really happy.
Nobody liked the squad. It was like, right, fine, someone's getting stuck into these lads. They're working hard, and like that. That is great for a bit, but it has got a shelf life, hasn't it? So I think Forest, they're not feeling, because I think they quite like Marinakis still, don't they? Despite everything that's gone on, because he obviously gone to Europe and he's done quite a lot of good in the city and stuff like that. But I think they might not feel great about the squad and some of those players at the moment. And if they don't feel like that, and they see if he puts them through the pace, like, they'll love that straight away. And like wearing shin pads and training, those speeds, all that sort of stuff, like that will be great for them. And I think they'll lap it up to begin with.
Do you know what it is? You know, when you feel really sick and then you force yourself to have like chicken and mushroom soup. He's basically that. He's like he's the step to kind of resolving and get better. Get back to, or as he put it, Dyche fitness. Yeah.
But like I think he'll be fine already. But like I'd be stunned if he lasted beyond the season. Like I think they've got enough good players and to stay up there, and he'll be fine. And
I'd be amazed if they got relegated.
But in the same breath, you never know. With Marinakis, like it could go spectacularly wrong.
I'm already looking forward to our reunions. I'm sure there'll be joyous occasions.
Yeah, I'll add some great little moments in the festive schedule. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on Sean Dyche returning to the Premier League or anything else we discussed today. Also, Jarrad Branthwaite on the game of the weekend. Coming up, it's Tottenham, isn't it, on Sunday? Yeah, Tottenham on Sunday.
4:30.
So the stadium, so that should be an interesting one. Under the lights, given it's getting darker. But yeah, cheers everybody for tuning in this week. If you're watching on YouTube, do hit like, do hit subscribe, leave a comment. If you listen to us on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a rating, review, or a comment as well. If you want to email us, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. We'll be back again next week to look back on the Tottenham game and any other news stories to break over the course of the next few days. So cheers from me and Paddy, up the top of you. Speak to you next week.